Are you tired of your builds looking like block vomit? Well, after this video, you will master color theory in Minecraft. The goal is 50k subs, so I'd appreciate it if you subscribed. Let's get started. What is color? There are three main factors that determine color: hue, saturation, and luma. Hue is the shade of a color. Most commonly, we can refer to the three primary colors of red, yellow, and blue, and then the three secondary colors of green, orange, and purple, which are just combinations of the primary colors. Saturation is the intensity of a color. Let's take a shade of red and boost the saturation. And now let's lower it. As you can see, it makes a big difference. Luma is the brightness of a color. Now let's take the shade of blue and boost the luma, and now let's lower it. These three components can all play a massive role on how color makes us feel. Categorizing color. To simplify things, let's sort all these colors into three categories: neutral colors, loud colors, and pastel colors. Neutral colors are more muted and subtle. These colors include anything on the grayscale, which is everything in between black and white, earth tones, which are mostly browns, creams, or greens, and even navy, which is a very dark shade of blue that is close to black. Loud colors would be the opposite. These are colors that are bright and high in saturation that are made to stand out. Think of neon colors like these. These colors are here to make a statement and should be used very sparingly. Pastel colors would fall somewhere in the middle. These are hues that are lower in saturation, but not dark like neutral colors. Let's take the same loud colors as before and mute them. These would be pastel colors. Pastel colors are subtle and easy on the eyes while still providing a pop of color. Applying color to Minecraft. So let's define which blocks in Minecraft fall into our three categories of color. So starting off, we have a bunch of neutral colors. Now this isn't every block of the game, but this is pretty much most of the ones that you'd probably use for building. We have everything from different wood types, which are going to be our earth tones, all the way to obsidian, even skulk, which would be more of our navy tones. And then we have our grayscale, which is mostly going to be our stones and other materials like this. We also have more earth tones in the terracotta, the dirt, and even some cream tones in the sand and the end stone. And obviously all the lighter color blocks like quartz. And I think this final display of wool dyes sums it up perfectly. So we have our grayscale with the black to white, and then our two gray tones. Then we have earth tones, which are our browns and darker green colors. So all of these are considered neutral colors. Feel free to screenshot this for future reference. All right, next up we have loud colors. So some examples of loud colors would even be some flowers or plants. Then we have various blocks here, such as our ore blocks like diamond, emerald, redstone, etc. The unstripped nether wood is super bright and vibrant. Resin, honey blocks, etc. Don't forget the coral blocks as well. They are super bright and vibrant and full of saturation. And then all of the following dyes right here in wool and concrete powder. Even our glazed terracotta right there. These colors are super saturated, in your face. These are some examples of loud colors. Feel free to screenshot this as well. And then our final category is pastel colors. So these colors will fall somewhere in the middle. You know, they're not as saturated as our loud colors, but these blocks will still add a nice pop of color in a more subtle way. So here we're starting off with some wood types. We have our acacia, mangrove, warped wood, crimson wood, and our cherry wood. They add a subtle splash of color, but they're not too bright, too vibrant, or too saturated. We have these various stones here. We have like andesite brick, which adds a little bit of red, but not too powerful. We have our red sandstone here, which adds a little bit of orange tones. Our prismarine blocks, which add a little bit of teal or cyan. Purple blocks, which add a light shade of almost like a lavender. And even red nether brick. It's a little bit darker, it's a little bit more subtle than, for example, redstone. Now all of our copper blocks are great pastel colors. They're not too bright, not too in your face. And terracotta is actually a great way to add some color into your builds in a very subtle way. We have all of these dyes here in terracotta that are a lot more subtle, a lot more muted, right? Versus some of the same dyes right over there, which are very bright and vibrant. So terracotta is a great way to add some more muted pastel tones to your build. And even some of these natural blocks here, like leaves, pumpkins, melons, frog lights, sponge blocks, moss, etc., are great ways to add a little splash of colors. So feel free to screenshot this for pastel blocks. Combining color. Okay, so here I have 3 styles on how to combine colors. So as you can see here, I have 3 houses that are actually all exactly the same block for block, yet they all have completely different color combinations. So let's start with the first house, which is monochromatic. So this house has a lot of similar tones, a lot of dark browns here and a black as well with the deep slates. But yeah, this house is pretty much very monochromatic, darker colors. We have a little bit of contrast, with the lanterns, with the stone buttons, and even like the spruce leaves. But as you can see, very monochromatic look. It can look really good in either dark colors or bright colors. Like for example, you could probably build the same thing with pale oak and maybe some like cherry wood as well for a brighter version of this. But yeah, that's monochromatic. It's definitely a stylized look, and I would definitely use it in a contrasting biome if you want it to stand out, or you can build it in a biome with similar tones to make it more subtle. Here in the middle, we have my favorite, which is complementary colors. Now, complementary colors don't have to be exact opposites on the color wheel. So in the middle, we have red with our mangrove wood, and opposite to red on the color wheel would be green. So we have plenty of leaves and greenery around to get some of that green back in to contrast against our mangrove. And as well as the roof trim here, we have our prismarine bricks, which aren't exactly green, but they're more of like a tealish color, which is a bluish green. And you can see how well it contrasts against the mangrove there. Now, complementary colors don't have to be exact opposites. For example, at the bottom, we have tuff, which is more of like a bluish greenish stone, a little bit more on the blue side. But you can see here that the blue even contrasts pretty well against our red mangrove there. And I even kind of did the same thing with the glass. We have red stained glass down here, and then blue stained glass up there as well. And yeah, you can see by adding in some subtle color, we have a beautiful complementary build here. Now, in my opinion, complementary colored builds are the most balanced, and I think they work pretty much in any setting or any biome. Last but not least, we have analogous color scheme. So analogous colors are colors that are similar on the color wheel. Not exactly the same, but in the similar category. So as you can see here, we have a very warm toned build. We have a bunch of reds, oranges, and even yellow. The red with our mangrove wood, orange with acacia wood, and yellow with our bamboo. So this house is overall a very warm build, and I used the pale oak leaves to kind of tone it down a little bit by adding some more grayscale to the build since it's very bright and vibrant. Now this is more of a bold look. It can definitely send a statement if you want to show off a little bit. I find this color palette best for Asian or fantasy style builds. Analogous colors would definitely grant you the boldest results, as you can see here. So if you want to be bold and stand out, this is definitely the way to go. The 4-step method. Okay guys, I'm going to show you a method where you can create a color palette for any build. Now I'm going to refer to this as the 4-step method. So let's start with step number 1. Step 1 will be to add a neutral frame with either pillars or a foundation. So you can see here, we have a neutral frame here with some pillars. I use the mangrove logs, which are actually brown, similar to spruce, but a little bit different of a texture. And on this side, we have kind of like a foundation out of quartz. So this is step number 1. And then if we move on, step number 2, you can now add neutral or pastel colored walls. So now this depends on how much color you want. So if you want less color, go for neutral colored for the walls, like this for example. We have wool block, calcite, and birch logs. And this will give us back some neutral tones. So this build is looking pretty much all neutral right now. And then on this side, we added in a splash of color with some pastel blocks like brick and granite. And keep in mind, you can have 2 different types of walls. Like for example, here on the bottom floor, I have neutral colored walls with the quartz. And then on the top floor, I have a pastel colored wall. All right, and step 3 will be to add a darker contrasting roof. Now there are many ways to do this, but the roof should always be darker than the rest of the build in order to round out the entire structure. So what I mean by this is you can either do this with the roof trim like I did here. We have deep slate tiles, which are very dark and round out this entire build pretty good. But on this side, we have deep slate bricks and cobbled deep slate just in the fill and not the trim of the roof. It still rounds out the build very well, even with our lighter mangrove trim. So some part of your roof definitely needs to be darker than the rest, whether that be the trim or the fill of the roof. Important to note, the trim or the fill of your roof can be the same color as the neutral pillars. Now on step 4, you can add loud or pastel colors occasionally in the details, such as flowers, windows. So let's start with the left house first. So comparing it to our previous step, you can see it's looking a little dull, little one-dimensional here. And you can see with the final result, I added in a bunch of color with our azalea leaves and our prismarine blocks, which contrast very well against the greens and the red mangrove. So we added in a ton of greenery, plants and such around to add some much needed color and contrast. And here's even the side profile. You can see how much the prismarine and the leaves add to make the build less boring. Now this is how you add pops of color. Loud colors are best used in small doses, so just keep that in mind. And coming over to the right side build, you can see I went almost with like a mini mansion look here, but we added in tons of color with our oxidized copper and even bamboo. Now these two colors on their own are complementary. Blue and yellow are opposites on the color wheel, so you can see I added in a ton of contrast and a ton of color to this build. And it works because our structure and our foundation is more muted and subtle. Even the brick tones are a lot more muted. So I went pretty crazy with the color here just to show you guys how far you can really push it. We have tons of contrast here, bright, vibrant pastel tones. Now I realize I have bamboo in the neutral category, but when you're using bamboo to contrast, you can see how it can almost act as a loud color when it's contrasting against other blocks. So we even added cherry leaves around the roof, some potted plants here and there. Yeah, this is a great way to add tons of color. I went with more pastel tones for this build. Turned out great. Only loud colors I would really say are even here are probably those berry bushes, some of the flowers that are colored. And yeah, that's about it. The bamboo and the copper, I would consider those more pastel tones. And you can just see how much life and vibrance it brought out from this right here. So yeah, if you follow my 4-step method, I think that's a surefire way in order to create a great block palette every single time. Start with the neutral frame, add neutral or pastel walls, depending on how much color you want. Then add a darker contrasting roof. And then last, you can add loud or pastel colors occasionally, sprinkle them here and there with the details such as flowers, potted plants, windows, shutters, etc. Now, for builds where you want multiple block palettes, repeat the same 4 steps to sections of the build or add extensions to it, and repeat the process with different blocks. These rules are not set in stone, but this is a foolproof way to have a great block palette every time. As you get better, you can start to break these rules and experiment. Alright, and I can't end the video without showing you guys an amazing build that showcases everything that we've learned right here. Here I have one giant house in 4 different block palettes here. So let me start by showing you guys everything that I've done here. So let's start on the left side. You can see I have a little horse stable here, which I would argue is a lot more monochromatic. We have dark, earthy tones here, as well as our deep slate. Very neutral, very monochromatic look here. Now this piece is attached to one section of the house, which I would argue is more analogous colors with some complementary here and there to break it up. So we have mud for the bottom floor, and we have acacia wood, so we have a lot of orangish tones, orangish earth tones here. And then we use the unstripped acacia logs to add in some gray. We even have stone bricks here and there to add some more gray. And at the top here, we have some more gray with our deep slate bricks and our cobbled deep slate there. So not quite monochromatic, but colors that are pretty similar on the color wheel. even to include our chimney in the back, which is more of the light reddish tones. Now in the front here, you can see we added some contrast by creating this little market hooded area here with our purpur blocks, which adds a nice little splash of contrast in the details right here in the front, as well as our potted plant and our amethyst right there. So I would consider this more of an analogous color scheme here. Now the next section of the house, I wanted to use a lot of different blocks here. So you can see our frame is made out of dark oak and deep slate bricks, so very dark colored frame, which then means that the walls would have to be a lot lighter of a color in order to contrast. So you can definitely consider this build to have a complementary color palette. The first floor is not super contrasting with our tuff. It's a little bit darker of a stone, but it's definitely the bluish tones. And then we use copper trap doors as windows, which adds a nice bit of contrast here. Coming up to the next floor, we use actually birch wood, which contrasts very well against dark oak. You can see that with the dark oak window shutters that we added as well. And then on the top floor, we used cherry wood, which contrasts very nice against our deep slate bricks. For the roof, we have a combination of jungle wood and mud bricks up here, a lighter brown, and that's also contrasting great with our deep slate bricks as well. And this is how the back looks like here. Now next up, we have the perfect example of complementary here with red and green. You can see we have mangrove wood for our walls, and we have prismarine bricks for our roof trim. And then to tie it all together, we have tons of neutral tones in our frame, and to fill in the roof with spruce wood. Now on the bottom, I added a little trim of tuff here and there, which contrasts against our mangrove as well with the bluish tones versus the red. And here you have a beautiful looking build. And then we added a splash of pastel tones throughout with our pink cherry leaves and pink flowers here and there. This is what the back of it looks like here. I have these two builds connected with a little balcony. And then last but not least, we have a tower in more of a monochromatic style. We have a bunch of neutral tones. And I guess you could consider the vines and the moss here more pastel, but they're definitely more on the earth tone side of things as well. So here we just have a tower, very simple, but I wanted to showcase gradient here. So you can see at the top, we have purely clean stone up there. But as we get lower and lower on the tower, it slowly fades into a mossy green kind of stone look here. So here is a perfect showcase of how you can use color and gradients as well. But this looks best for large builds such as this tall tower. Then to tie everything together, we have a bunch of earth tones with our spruce and oak wood. And there you have it. Here's one build that has a bunch of different color all throughout, yet is perfectly balanced and looks great. All of the map downloads for my videos are available on my Patreon. I also have YouTube memberships, so if you guys would like to support further, you can definitely check those links out in the description below. We also have a Discord server and a SMP Minecraft server. If you guys want to play with me and some of my friends, you just have to be a Patreon member or a YouTube member in order to join. That's all I have for you guys. Peace.